Right. Welcome to the stream today. So, important streaming tip. I tried to include some nice, soothing programming background music the last couple times I've streamed, and like large chunks of those videos are muted out on Twitch because they violate copyright. I was using the free Code Camp radio, which I assumed was just streaming, copyright free or whatever unlicensed music that didn't have copyright on it, which makes you wonder if the entire Free Code Camp radio site is illegal. But so until I find a better solution for streaming background music, we're going to go musicless. So if you're enjoying that, I apologize. And if you have any good, there's some paid services that you can do, but I mean, I don't know if I'm that, like, I don't know if I want to pay any money to give you guys background music at this point. Um, so I'll figure that out. So we'll just go no music for today because again, Twitch just mutes out large sections of it. Just all audio is gone, which makes them unwatchable. And then when I tried to upload them to YouTube, YouTube like actually lists out like here's every copyright violation in your video, and it's like every song that was streaming while I was that was playing while I was streaming, and it says they don't give you a copyright strike. They make that pretty clear on YouTube. They say, hey, this isn't we're not going to strike your channel for it. However, you cannot monetize the video. And it even is kind of interesting because the YouTube thing said, and even if you don't have monetization turned on, we may show ads during your video, which I wasn't aware of. That's really weird. And if we do, any proceeds from that are going to go to the creators, not to you, which is fine. I'm not trying to monetize this content anyway, but it's a big headache and I don't want to mess with it. So until I find truly uncopyrighted, free to use music, we're going to go musicless. So, all right, cool. So what are we talking about today? Well, I've already worked some today. I should have turned the stream on hours ago, but I was head down working on, I'm trying to get to launch like today. So let's actually show you this before we go. Deploy the fleet.io. We've uploaded, the documentation is in launch condition. Like it's not great, it's not the best. I was gonna say it's not great. It's pretty good. Like I've spent a lot of time on it, but it's not, I mean, obviously we'll add to it as people have questions and things like that. But I've added videos that I filmed, as you can see here, and they're all using, I'm not sure how you pronounce it, Libri, I don't know, the LBRY. It's sort of the blockchain alternative to YouTube. And the big reason that I'm using that is because I'll show you here. It's got some pros and cons, but it's got a real clean player that we can include. And then I'm going to come to the end of it. Excuse me. Once it ends, it just goes to this screen right here that you see. I don't really like on YouTube, and there used to be, I feel like, a way to prevent it, but you get all of like the suggested videos, which are mostly my YouTube videos, so that's fine. But like, I don't like the look of it. It's kind of like an ad over. It's not ads, right? But they're my videos. I don't know. I just don't like the way it looks when it's done. Like you get this huge tile of other videos to watch. And the point of this is not to like, oh, hey, squirrel, look, there's another video I want to watch. It's to keep you focused on getting through the steps to get deploy the fleet setup. And so I think that's fun. And I don't care that this says join. Again, if somebody knows how to pronounce this, please tell me. Library, Libri, I don't know. I'm sure the internet can tell us how to pronounce it. I don't care that it's sort of an ad. This is a pretty vanilla way to advertise to people. But the rewatch or discuss is, this is the con of doing it this way. The downside being rewatch doesn't just play it again, and I can't click on this rewatch thing down here. If I click rewatch or discuss, it launches lbry.tv and takes you here to watch it again. However, if you simply refresh the page, it comes right back and you can watch it again. But I feel like that's fine. Like people aren't going to find creating an account so riveting that they're going to have to watch it again. And it's not like they're going to miss a lot and have to rewatch it 3 times to get it. And so same thing here for the ESP8266 Arduino core. We've got a walkthrough that I filmed as well as the written instructions, ESP32. The walkthroughs right here. So yeah, the documentation is all in a spot where I'm ready to point people at it and say, hey, please try to use the service and let me know what you think. My goodness, screaming right after you eat is hard. I apologize if I'm burping a lot. So that's good. I got that all set up this morning. But the other thing that I was working on this morning that I want to just talk through really quick is the session. So right now, sessions are memory-based on the back end. So when you log in, we store your session information in memory. It's very easy to set up, very fast. The problem with that is when the service reboots, all the sessions are basically lost, which isn't a huge deal, except that right now, currently, once you're logged in to the app, and this is something that's on the backlog that I'll get to, it doesn't handle the session expiring gracefully. So like, for example, what's a for example? Let's say I'm on the firmware tab and I left this open and my session, so the session expires after a day regardless. But let's say I reboot the server and somebody's in the middle of using it and they're on the upload of new firmware and they're writing some firmware and working on it that way. And then I push an update, it reboots, relaunches the service on the back end. Now their session is toast. If they come here and they click upload a new firmware, it's going to happily open the dialog. They can pick a file, version number, all this stuff, click upload, and then it's going to kind of just not do anything. And unless they're technical and they want to come over and look at like the console and the network to see what happened, they'll get on the network tab, you'll get a 401 that like the create firmware failed because you're unauthorized, you're not logged in. And so I need to come back through on the front end project and make that handled more gracefully. But the problem with that is, let's just say I had it, that work was done. Like every call, if it returned a 401, gracefully did something. Let's say in the case of upload a new firmware, when you hit upload, the little notification drop down from the top that says your session has expired, please log in again, and then it took you back to the login screen. I'm thinking something like that would be the flow. The problem with that is getting started first out of the gate here and hopefully getting some people to start using it and getting feedback. I imagine I'm going to need to push lots of changes to the service. So somebody might say, hey, I found an issue. Great. I got to push a fix. Simple feature to implement, I got to push a feature. I got to push a bug fix. And I feel like I'm going to be doing that, every day, every other day. And so as people are coming on, I'll have more people using it and their sessions are constantly getting blown away because I'm restarting the service because I'm pushing an update. And I feel like that's a terrible, terrible user experience, especially first trying to onboard people if the sessions are constantly, disappearing underneath of them, even if it was handled well within the front end. So that is a long way of saying I need the sessions to persist. I really feel like that's necessary to launch because that's not a problem I want people to have. I want to be able to push as many updates to this as I want and not have them notice because the session got blown away. So this morning, what I did was let's go to Express compatible session store. So again, the backend's using Express.js, and then you have this list of compatible session stores. The following modules implement a session store that is compatible with this module, with Express.js session. And I mean, there's lots of them. You can see, scroll. I was using memory store. There is a built-in memory store with just the session package, but they make it very clear that it is not production ready because it leaks memory, so it's only good for development. And so I switched to memory store, which is a production ready memory store. It doesn't have any leaks and is meant to be used in a production environment. And that's been working really well. And so this morning I said, well, what if we just switch to a file based? Because in render.com, unlike Heroku, I can provision a local drive really easily and then just point to it. And so, which one did I use? Session file store. It was this one. So I implemented session file store this morning. And, I look at things like, oh, how many weekly downloads? Does it look like it? I looked at a few of the issues and everything looked okay. I implemented this. It was slow AF. Like it was really, really bad. When I was profiling it in production, okay, here's a good example. So let me switch products. Twitch 32, let's go to Twitch. You can see right here, firmware and devices, I make 2 calls to the service. They took 172 milliseconds a piece, and that's actually on the high side. Like, I feel like Dynamo has to like warm up, for lack of a better term. So let's switch back. Yeah, so this is more indicative. Like 99 milliseconds, 68 milliseconds, sub 100 milliseconds. When I put in that file store, it just saves the session in an encrypted way on the local file system. I was averaging 800 to 900 milliseconds, some of them going over a second a piece. And so in this case, where you're having to call 2, like I load the firmware and the devices asynchronously at the same, these happen at the same time. They don't waterfall. So total here is 99 milliseconds, not 167 milliseconds. But even so, that was a second, and you could really feel it in the app. Like when you switch between products, like, so let's switch from the ESP8266 example to the 32. I mean, it's pretty fast. You see the screen flash, but it refreshes really fast. Like before, I'd click on it, and you'd like you really felt the difference. And so, it was an awful, like 10x slowdown using the file store, which I was, makes sense from a computer science point of view, like going to disk. Now, Render says that the disks are SSDs, so it's not like you're going to a spinning disk, but even so, whatever the logic is in that library, I don't feel like disk IO is the limiting factor. I think there's probably some other things going on in that library that make it super, super slow. And so I reverted that PR. I made a PR. I merged it, which was dumb. I think Render gives me a way to push branches. Deploy latest commit. Yeah, maybe not. I'll have to look at that because that's one of the things I want to figure out is like, can I deploy a branch to Render, test it, and then merge it versus merge it, find out it's super, super slow or bad or broken, and then have to revert the merge and go back and all that stuff. So I'll research that. But so I reverted that, went back to the memory store, and now what I'm looking at, and I looked at originally, but I said, oh, it's going to take too long, was the DynamoDB session store. And the reason for that is because I'm already using DynamoDB for storing some things like the firmware and devices and some other things I track in DynamoDB already. So I already have a connection to DynamoDB. And the reason I didn't originally was because I felt like, man, it's probably going to be really slow to go all the way out to DynamoDB and come back. Like it might take, 100 milliseconds, but even saying it now. So after I saw 1 second times, I was like, oh, 100 milliseconds is nothing. It's way better than that. And I get the persistence. And I'm trying not to spin up, like, I know Redis is really popular for this, but then I need a Redis somewhere. Like, I have to spin up Redis somewhere. And I'm really trying to keep this. I'm still in the product market fit zone of this, right? Like, I don't need to spin up all this infrastructure just to test the idea. I'm just trying to test the idea. Do people want this, and how can we make it better? And so maybe 100 milliseconds is fine. We're going to try it. What we're going to do right now, and that's the point of the stream today, is we're going to integrate DynamoDB, test it, see what the network times look like connecting out to DynamoDB. Because again, it's going to do this for every single, and that's where maybe some of these libraries would benefit from caching. Maybe that's what's wrong with the file one. Like it doesn't cache at all. But maybe the DynamoDB will. And anyway, we're going to test it and see how it performs. And if it's reasonable, we're going to use that because I really want session persistence. Enough talking. Let's do the coding. So this is what we're going to work on. Connect DynamoDB. And yeah, so we're not going to mess with any of this config path, config JSON, because I already have all that stored in environment variables. So I think all we have to do is specify like a table. And we don't need reap interval because it'll take care of that for us, I believe. Well, we can set the, like it says, we can set the TTL expires on the DynamoDB table itself, kind of like Redis where you give it an expires, and so it'll just clean it out for you after a certain amount of time anyway. So, and does this give us like information about how to do that? Expiring items. Amazon time to live allows you to define a per item time spent to determine when an item is no longer needed. Shortly after the date and time of the specified time spent, DynamoDB deletes the item from your table without consuming any write throughput. TTL is provided at no extra cost as a means to reduce stored data volumes by retaining only the items that remain current for your workload's needs. Cool. Like the TTL attribute. The item must contain, let's see, when enabling TTL on a table, DynamoDB service will look for and determining if an item is from the item must contain the attribute specified when TTL was enabled on the table. For example, if you specify for a table to use the attribute name expdate, but an item does not have an attribute with that name, the TTL process ignores it. Okay, so if you don't use the right name, and then I think the library is suggesting expires as the field. Okay. Great. So let's enable DynamoDB sessions. It seems like it should be fairly easy. We're using Express 4, so what we're going to do is just, we're not going to use all this code, but we'll just grab it and come over here. Get rid of that. Up here in Express. So we're using memory store, and part of this as well is figuring out like, what do you do for tests? And I feel like tests should go back to using like the leaky memory store, because you have to do some funky things with this memory store to make it work right. In the tests, like as an example, I had to add a like after all session store.stop interval, because that in-memory session store, this memory store package, it has a background process that's like reaping, constantly reaping and looking for expired sessions that it needs to remove. And that when you're running tests in Jest, it's like, hey, something's still running and your process didn't exit smoothly. And that's because you have to stop the reap interval. And so there's some funky things there. So if I'm not going to use this as my production anymore, I think I'll back that out and use the, the not meant for production built-in in-memory session store when tests are running. But for now, let's just drop this here. And so we don't need that. We already have, so this like right here, var session equals require express session. That's my line up there, import session. So we'll get rid of that. And then I want to do something like this. And so what we're going to do is we need to require connect DynamoDB. So we're going to say Dynamo session, session factory from, that's not installed yet. So let's do that. Let's do n, first of all, let's get checkout branch Dynamo sessions. Okay, And let's do npm uninstall memory store. Get rid of that. And we'll do npm install connect DynamoDB. That was a loud pop. I think that might have even come through on the audio there. Jeez. Okay. So now we'll say from connect to DynamoDB. And we can get rid of that. And now the options in here will say const DynamoDB store equals Dynamo session factory session. And then let's give it some and the only reason I export this session store in the first place is because I need to cancel that in memory. So I can actually refactor all of this. If this works, I can refactor this a bit. And so let's look at, I'm going to pull the options over to another tab here, so I can see like what options we want to pass. So client, we'll let it use its own DynamoDB client, and hopefully it reuses the client. AWS region defaults to US East 1, so we definitely want to set that. So we'll say AWS region, AWS region is US West 2, I believe it is. You look at my US West 2, yeah. Okay. And while I'm typing, I'm going to create a table name called sessions. What does the primary key need to be? I don't know. So this is, let me bring this back over now since I'm going to have to figure this out. So I think Connect will build its own table. And I don't like how it says down here. Where is it? Yeah, the read capacity. Like, I don't want provisioned throughput. I want it to be the I can't remember what they call it. It helps enable auto scaling, but you can turn it off. On demand. I want it to be on demand, not provisioned. And so I hope it will work with that. So let's go to the repo here and see. Like, could we? This is going to be the exact same documentation, but and it should have all of these permissions. But like, if I want to create the table ahead of time myself, can I do that? Let's go into issues. Create table. On demand table. There we go. Oh, or this way. Okay. So we'll open that and we'll open this one. Is it possible to create an on-demand table instead of a provisioned one? I looked over your code and it did not seem to think this was possible. Is there a reason why? Thanks so much for the package. I'm going to thumbs up that and say +1 on using existing on demand table. Okay, so it's not looking good. The problem with provision tables is you pay for that every month, and the amount of scale that we'll have for the first long while doesn't justify it. Like there's no reason, and it's not a ton of money, but there's no reason to pay for provision capacity that we won't even remotely come close to using, because it sets up alarms that are constantly going off of like, you're underusing, you're underusing, you're underusing. And it's kind of a headache. So the on-demand, I prefer the on-demand to get started. I'd rather not create a new session table every time I deploy. I have create table. You can include the table in the config options. What I might need to do, or Kevin, you can always look at the code, right? There's probably a create in here. Yes, config. Okay. Check if sessions table exists. Otherwise, create it. So, cool. There's a reap, destroy. Not really a whole lot going on here. Pretty, less than 300 lines of code. So this is where we don't want. So I guess it'll just be null if we don't set it. So the prefix is session and the hash key. So we're setting the region. Client.create table. So the table name is going to be sessions. The primary, I can't remember if this dot hash key options dot hash key or ID. Okay, so we just want it to be ID. Okay. So I think if we create a primary key of ID on sessions and sort key, I don't think there is a sort key. Key schema, it's dot hash key, which is ID. And it's only going to create a provisioned one, but I'm going to create an on-demand one. I think we can get around this. Let's try it. So we want to make sure that we're in US West, and just to extra make sure, we'll say the hash key. Let me bring the documentation back over to my other window. Okay. Hash key optional, defaults to ID. If we say hash key ID, and then we say table sessions, just like that. I think that should work, but I need to make sure the table exists. So I've got sessions. I'm going to change it to be an on-demand table, not a provisioned one. And ID is type string. What did it say in the code? Key type is hash. Oh, attribute type string. There you go. Okay, cool. So I'm going to hit create on this table. This might take a couple of iterations. So we've got sessions. Okay. And I think client, AWS region table, and hash key. Client, we don't need. It'll create its own client. I think that's all we need. Dynamo session factory creates a connect DynamoDB. That should work. So let's just do an npm run dev and see what blows up. Listening on port 3000. Okay, now that initially goes and sees, do you have a session? And that seemed really swift. Let's open up the side here. We get, so one thing to be aware of if you're following along at home is the times in, no, actually that's not true. Not through here. When you're doing Quasar dev, the times add a couple hundred milliseconds because it does a proxy. But this is the deployed. Yeah, we're not doing the Quasar dev here. So let's just see if the session works first of all. Okay. That worked. And these are a little high. But part of the reason why these can be high is because I'm running this locally and I'm hitting AWS in Oregon. When this is running in render, render's co-located in Oregon as well. So those times should be really fast. And in fact, we can see what the, yeah, see most of that time is just in the DynamoDB hit anyway. And so, I mean, I don't know, let's come over and look at sessions now. Oh, and I didn't enable expires, but I feel like this might have worked. Items, sweet. We have a session in our DynamoDB table. That was easy. And it has an expires on it. And so all I need to do is enable TTL on the table and it will expire them. That's pretty good. Let's see how long these things take. Let's switch products. We're going to test 500, 500. Again, I think a lot of that is, most of that is Dynamo time. I think we're looking pretty good. Sorry, when I say Dynamo time, most of that is the hit from querying firmware and devices like these, like the actual DynamoDB call, where that will be ideally sub 10, but normally sub 20 millisecond times. I guess I could show you what I'm talking about here. Right here. See here? This find device, find firmware took 306, 305 milliseconds. That's the amount of time it took the code to go out to DynamoDB, fetch the firmware, fetch the device list. And this is sub 20 milliseconds when it's in production. It's just that slow going from my machine to Oregon. It takes a long time to get to Oregon from here. Okay, so that's fairly promising. Yeah, 160. It's looking really good. So I wonder what happens now to the table if I log out. Session is gone from DynamoDB. That's really slick. I think we may have a winner here. Yeah, I'm really liking the way that this is feeling. And then I can worry about setting up expires later. Okay, it works. And it works seemingly well. Let's leave that open. Deploy a, actually, let me go back to my issues on demand table and say at Sean Okay. Be a good community member. Okay. So we're good there. What was I going to do? Oh, Christmas. Oh, deploy a branch render.com. About render.com, deploy a branch. What on earth? Okay, that's not working at all. Okay, docs, branch. PR reviews only create one instance of a single service for each pull request. Once enabled, every new PR opened on the base branch for your service will automatically create a new instance of the service based on the code in the PR. This instance will be listed under the pull requests tab for your service. Slick. It creates an environment variable for you. Like that. Hack code Arial. Hey. Every push to the pull request branch automatically builds. So we're going to have to pay for that, but presumably it won't be for very long because as soon as you delete the PR, it deletes the environment. Yeah, right here. Any changes made to the base service after the PR instance is created will not apply to the PR instance. This helps you test both code and environment changes in the PR without changing. PR previews are billed at the same rate as your base service and are always prorated by the second. If your base service is a free static site, all its PR previews will be free as well. Oh, that's cool. If your base service costs $7 a month, which ours does, PR preview instances based on it will cost the same. Okay, so we're talking not a lot. I like this. I like it. I'm not sure what the difference is with preview environments. So I'm creating a clone of your production environment, including services, databases, and environment groups. And that's different because PR previews only create one instance of a single service if you'd like to create a high fidelity copy of your entire production environment, including databases. I don't, which actually reminds me. We need to, hey, Yasir, I don't know if I'm pronouncing your name correctly. I said it a bunch in my stream yesterday, and so I apologize. I hope that's close, Yasir. If not, give me some way to know how to pronounce it correctly. And I am doing great. Thanks for asking. I hope you're doing well. I need to remove the disk. So today, I'm trying to launch today. And right now I'm trying to enable DynamoDB session store for the backend. I had in memory, it has some holdups because when you restart the service, which will likely be happening often in the early stages of launching this because I'll be fixing bugs and adding features, it blows everybody's session away. And so I switched to a file-based because in render.com, I use this service called Render to host it. You can create an SSD that's attached to the service, but that was super slow. It was taking like a second to resolve sessions on every single call to validate the user. So I dropped that, and now I'm implementing DynamoDB sessions and testing that to see if we find a good medium landing point there. It's not going to be fast as in memory, obviously, but it should be fast enough. And what I need to do is over here, I've got a disk that I need to delete so I don't have to pay for it because I'm not using it anymore. Delete disk. Okay, and I am going to enable pull request previews. Pull request previews will show up here as they are created. So right now, there are no pull requests. Yeah, there are no pull requests on the repo. I'll pull that over here. And so what we just did was on render, we enabled pull request previews. So when I push the code that we're working on right now, it will create, I'm not sure if my stuff will handle that well, but when I push this Dynamo sessions branch and create a pull request based on it, it will generate a new instance that I can hit and test against. So, and does it create all the environment? Let's just see what happens. Whatever. We're just gonna wing it, see what happens. I've got everything set up, and I did already confirm that the sessions work. Okay. All right. Let's see what we got here in terms of changes. We got rid of memory store. We swapped out connect DynamoDB. The tests are going to fail right now, but that's okay. We'll come back to that because they rely on some memory store stuff that we can fix later. I don't know what this is. Oh, that's my local. Yeah, we can get rid of that. Let's just get rid of the whole folder. That was from when I was doing file-based sessions. So we can delete that folder. That should get rid of that. And then right here, we're just doing DynamoDB. Great. Really slim change. And enable DynamoDB sessions. Okay. Let's commit that. Let's push it. Yes. And then we should be able to come over to here. Dynamo sessions has recently been pushed. Compare and pull request. And let's do create pull request. And now if all of that is working over here in render, and sorry, I'm not showing you the render dashboard because it has a bunch of my user information kind of in plain sight. So And it just showed up. The pull request just showed up. Enable DynamoDB sessions. And I mean, do I just wait? What happens if I click on it? Oh, it creates a whole different. And what does it have for the environment? All the same environment. Great. Okay. So presumably this will work. And then it gives me, okay. This is pretty fancy. I'm not gonna lie. I'm liking render more and more every time I use it. All right, we'll just wait for that to deploy. This is super fancy. Assuming it works. I might be jumping the gun here. So while we wait for that, this is the actual deployed version, app.deploythefleet.io. Let's clear this out. And let's look at some timing benchmarks here. So switching between a product, see 401. This is what I was talking about at the start of the stream. It doesn't handle that well because it restarted the service, but that's okay. We'll fix that later. I think I typed that wrong. Nope. We got it. Cool. All right. So let's look at some benchmarks here. If we switch between products, it will make 2 calls, firmware and devices. And you can see there, 61 milliseconds is really good. And those happen in parallel. They're not chained together. So it's not that I'm over 100. I'm 60 milliseconds. It's really snappy. So let's do it a couple times here. 60, it's really good in the 60s there. Okay, 60 milliseconds. So this is using in-memory session stores on the deployed production version. It looks like my PR deploy is ready. So let's open that up and see. I'm going to keep DynamoDB open here because I should see another session created. So if I come over here and I do this deploy the fleet at PR35. Oh man, this is really cool. It knows I'm not logged in. So let's do, oh man. Invalid credential. Did I type it wrong? Oh, I must have typed it wrong. Okay, we're in. Cool. And if I refresh my sessions table, I have a new session in Dynamo. Now let's open up the side here. And let's try some switches over here. Ooh, 226. So yeah, okay. I mean, not great. Let's do it a couple more times. That's a lot better. 122. 100. 120. Okay. I think that's going to be good enough. So in memory is obviously going to be the fastest you can possibly get when you're trying to fetch data, right? It's right there, ready to go. You pull it out of memory. I thought file wouldn't be much of a hit, but it turns out it's like a 700-800 millisecond hit. And again, I don't think that was disk IO. I think that was the library that I was using for file sessions. But DynamoDB, that's not bad at all. So I'm only about 40 milliseconds longer. Because remember, I was in 60, so 40 to 50 milliseconds slower to use DynamoDB sessions than memory. That's pretty good. I don't think I'm complaining about that. And the great part about that is that they persist. And so, well, let me make sure I've got that time set right. It's down here. Yeah, the timeout. So the timeout should still be the same. So that's really good. Let's do, and this is, I feel like this happens sometimes. Like we can look at, I can come to the dashboard and the logs actually and see 20 and 28. Yeah, 106. We're still, though, still looking pretty good on that. Okay. And let's do something like create new product. We'll say test. Let's see. Create took 115 milliseconds on the PR. These are going to share. So let's say create new product. Prod test. Yeah, see, that took 170 milliseconds. Like, it just kind of depends. What did I say this one took? 115. So, and then if we say delete, test. This is the delete right here. Took 129, and then the refresh on each of those took 100 milliseconds. Great, and then let's delete prod test. Delete. That took 84, 60, and 178. I say it was 129. Yeah, so it's not. I think I'm gonna call it good enough. Like certainly we could probably do some things to make that more performant, but for what I'm trying to accomplish, which is I just want to launch this thing and get people to use it, I think that's good enough. It's snappy. Like when you're switching between them, you're not getting a huge delay. It displays really quickly. ICEs, firmware, everything looks to be pretty snappy. Using DynamoDB as the session store, it'll take care of expiring them automatically once I configure that. That's really great. All right, we're gonna call it good. So what we'll do is we can't deploy the PR yet because I need to clean up some tests. Because the tests, let's go back and take a look at that actually. What time are we here? Yes, we are using TypeScript on the back end. That's this code right here. So again, the only reason I originally exported the session store was because I needed to, when I was using the production ready memory store, the tests needed to, as an example, I'll show it again. I had to do this after all session store.stop interval because the production in memory session store has this process that it kicks off in the background to reap expired sessions. And if you don't stop it, Jest says, hey, something's still running, your test didn't gracefully exit. And so that's why I have this, creating the session store as a const and exporting it versus most of the examples you'll see use, they do it just inline. They'll say session, this, store, and then they, instead of doing, they'll just put all this down here. But I think it's, I mean, I don't need to export it for sure now because I don't have any need to access it outside of this module. But any specific reason? No. Well, yes. Yasir's asking, is there any specific reason we want to use, I chose to use DynamoDB other than, I say Postgres. I don't know if that's how other people pronounce it. A couple of reasons. One, I have been granted a ton of AWS free credits. So I'm in the free tier of Dynamo anyway, so I wouldn't have to pay for that. But even if I grow out of that, I still don't have to pay for it for a while. And so that was one reason. The other was I'm not really sure how to, I'm not a DB admin, and so I don't really know how to set up Postgres. Like I'd have to host it somewhere, right? Presumably all of this is kept inside of AWS at the moment. And so, my service is running in AWS. It's talking to DynamoDB in AWS, so the network latency is really low on that. But I mean, I know for sure you could spin up Postgres in AWS somehow. I don't know how to do that, and it was something that I didn't want to mess with for now. And so at this point, all of it's kind of least resistance path to get to launching it and seeing if people find value in the service and want to use it. And everything that I've done here is very modularized. And so DynamoDB, the extent that DynamoDB is involved in the backend code is that I have this, what I call an AWS object provider. And so all of the code works on providers and services. And so I created a DynamoDB object provider, which serves as the backend for that. I could swap this out and create a Postgres object provider or a Mongo object provider or anything like that and make the swap out at any point that I wanted to. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. So the main idea was for me, that was the quickest way to get something up and running. If I had more experience with Postgres and stuff, I would have gone that way. It was really just DynamoDB is the quickest way for me to get it up and running. And so that's what I went with for now. But it's very easy to swap out, easy code wise. Now, if I have people using it, I'd obviously have to do some sort of data migration. But for now, yeah, it was just the easiest way to get started. So great. I know Postgres is super popular and a great. So nothing against Postgres. Like I know a lot of people use it. Okay. Well, I think what I will do is, man, I'm not using a lot of stuff in here. I need to clean this stuff up. Come on. Creating garbage here. Okay. So what I think I would like to do now, and I'm going to have to drop off the stream here because I've got some family stuff to go to. Kids keep you busy. Is I don't want to use Dynamo for the tests. And right now, if I were to run my tests, it's going to hit DynamoDB, which is dumb. We don't want to do that. So I think I will use the session in memory store and basically use like the Dynamo store if I'm in prod, and if not, just use the built-in session memory store so that when the tests run, they can be nice and fast and not have to worry about hitting Dynamo. So I will make that change. And what I'll be working on basically the rest of the day is finding places to launch. In other words, like I'm going to post this in a few different forums because I think I'm at a point now where I'm ready for people to try it out. Tell me how it's broken. Tell me what they like. Tell me what they hate. And then go through the process of, trying to make it better and getting it to a place where it's useful and helpful to people. So that's going to wrap up the stream. Yasir, thanks for joining, man. It's great to see you. I did review that PR you sent. If you have any questions or anything on what I said, just shoot me a comment on that PR. We can get that merged in. So thanks everybody for watching, and we'll see you next time.